So a big warm welcome to everyone today. It's lovely to see so many interested book fans who are happy to be with us here on this very sunny afternoon. At this complicated, difficult and tragic year draws to a close, we are delighted for the Lamm Jewish Library of Australia to host this book event. We love hosting book events and we love books. We value the insights and we value the calm they bring. As the final book event of the year, we reflect on the growth of the library and the innumerable successful high-level events that we have presented with both local and international speakers. We have been enriched by so much talent, intellect and wisdom that has been shared with our Jewish and wider community. The new year will bring lots more. Stay posted. Please make sure that you receive our Lamm Jewish Library of Australia newsletters. If you don't, please give us your email so that you can be informed of all our amazing offerings into the future. And all of this is due to our director, Dr. Mirav Karamelli, who has brought her vision and expertise to ensure that the library offers outstanding programs across a wide range of interests for people of all ages, taking place both day and evening. There are weekly events, lecture series, and hordes of one-off lectures. Some 40 events took place this year. Can you imagine in 1 year, just one organisation, one library? A big warm thank you, Mirav. It has been wonderful. Mirav, stand up so everyone can see you. It has been a wonderful year for LJLA, an impressive accomplishment indeed. Thank you. To our audience, please make our library a familiar and patronised space. We have a great collection of fiction and non-fiction, English, Hebrew, Yiddish, and large print books. And there is also a constant, wonderful range of books that can be purchased very reasonably. The LJLA community is a significant Jewish resource for the whole community. Now let's focus on our events today. John Safran is an Australian radio personality, satirist, documentary maker, and author, known for combining humour with religious, political, and ethnic issues. These features all roll into an enticing read in his latest book, Squat. With our heightened sensitivities to issues of anti-Semitism, Squat is really fascinating. We are all excited to hear from the author in person. Today, John is going to be in conversation with Ramona Koval. Ramona is a very well-known broadcaster, writer, editor, and journalist, and she is very admired by our library community. Ramona has an amazing CV with extensive and impressive accomplishments. We are delighted to welcome you back, Ramona, to join us for another event. I now hand over to Ramona and John. We are all very ready to listen to you both.
So, it's been so long since I've been at broadcast, I don't know how to turn this on. And I pressed the button on this. It's a mystery. I'll do this for the intro, and then I'll hand it back. So John Safran, look, he's nerdy and Scrabble obsessed. He seeks danger everywhere. He's asthmatic, but I'm asthmatic too, so that's nothing to be wrong. There's nothing wrong with it.
You also have the right of reply now. You're scammed to get the microphone on.
I haven't even started.
Accusations at me.
But in Yiddish we call you a lobus.
A lobus? Yeah, what does that mean?
A naughty in whose hands complex stories of crime or the danger of smoking or the murky depths of anti-Semitism are presented in highly researched books. His books are a crack up too, and the best way to get serious ideas across, I think, is the way John has approached these really serious ideas in his writing. His first book, Murder in Mississippi, won the Ned Kelly Award for the best crime, thriller and mystery writing in Australia. And he's joined previous recipients like Peter Temple and Peter Corris, and he was only getting started. That was his first book. That's pretty good. Challenge and Danger are his two middle names. And as he writes in his latest book, Squat, when you're a writer, bad things are good things. So John takes us on an adventure which is part Goldilocks and the Three Bears, part Conrad's Heart of Darkness, as he has us with our hearts in our mouths, reading of his strange adventures in the world of Kanye West, the Donda Academy, the Cornerstone Christian Church, all executed with his amusing sidekick. Now, maybe ex-girlfriend, I believe, Antoinette?
Yes.
The Greek Orthodox artist. So, let's frame this book is framed really. It's a story of this hip-hop artist, Kanye West, now known as Ye, whose anti-Semitic rants would normally be regarded as loopy, except that he's highly influential in the music industry and as a cultural figure. Can you paint a picture for this audience about how important he is as a cultural figure?
Yeah, I mean, he's so important that I wasn't even particularly invested in him, and I still knew too much about him. And because even though I was obsessed with hip hop, especially a little kid going to yeshiva college, and I do. It's kind of weird how all my work is so, or a lot of it is so kind of digging into Jewish identity, and then me kind of going, oh, for a mainstream Australian audience, it's kind of interesting for them to find out about strangles and, you know, the red heifer and everything like that. That when I was actually at yeshiva, my head was just totally into hip-hop and all the stories behind hip-hop. And
what are the stories behind hip-hop?
Oh, okay, for instance, when I was at yeshiva, that's when I first learned that there was friction between the Black American community and the Jewish American community. Sometimes. Oh, obviously I'm not saying it's overall or whatever. I was at yeshiva, I think, when there was a bit of a riot in Crown Heights because of, you know, an ambulance running over a black kid or whatever. But hip-hop kind of, and this was like pre-internet, and I just remember reading about this band I love, Public Enemy, and they had a few little lyrics where it's like, hang on, crucifixion, no fiction, so-called chosen, frozen, what does that mean? Who's Minister Farrakhan or whatever, and then I'd read in the paper this guy called Professor Griff, one of the members, and he'd be kind of ragging on the Jews, and like that was the first time, you know, I hadn't really thought about that kind of stuff before. And, oh, by the way, all this stuff I'm saying sort of floats into this book, if you know what I mean. It's not like we're talking about this hip-hop or whatever, it's not, and Jews and blacks, and it's not relevant to the book.
No, it's relevant.
Yeah, figure out.
Everybody, stop worrying. It's relevant.
And then
not worried.
I guess even just getting in, because I started being aware that there were Jewish people in hip-hop, like the Beastie Boys and the producers, and like, but I wasn't like overthinking it that much. It was just sort of like all stewing away for decades, you know, until the book. And so Kanye is sort of like a quarter of a generation, sort of in front, behind. You know, like by the time Kanye became huge, I kind of like expanded my palette, and you know, I still I think he's great. You know, but I think he's great in the same way someone said, "Oh, do you think the Beach Boys are great?" And I go, "Okay, what are their songs?" And then I go, "Oh, they did that one. Oh, yeah, they're great." But like, I'm not emotionally invested in it. But then, so you might be wondering, why did I go and shoot Kanye West? But it's not my fault. He started it. I'm minding my own business in Melbourne, and then he starts ragging on the Jews. And
what is he saying? He's tweeting, isn't he?
Yeah, he's tweeting, I'm going to go DEFCON 3 on the Jews, and he's appearing on the Alex Jones' InfoWars podcast, which was, you know, it's a bit like your radio show.
Yeah, it's a bit like
And he's telling Alex Jones, he's wearing a balaclava with that eye hole.
Yeah, what is that?
He
How
says...
does he breathe?
Although I've kind of, you know, in my various attempts to get into places over my careers, I've had to wear mouth masks and stuff.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, you can do it. You figure out a way to breathe. And so he said, he said to all his followers, he goes, everyone brings something of value to this world, which sounds pretty cool, but then the ... especially Hitler.
Yeah.
And then it's like, he's, I just found him interesting because he was such a mainstream figure.
So I mean, he's so big that he's selling millions and millions of copies of it. He's big, and I think his last, they don't have LPs or albums anymore. His last output was, I mean, he's had like #1 hits for 3 decades.
Oh yeah, totally. And people are like obsessed with him culturally all across.
And he was married to that woman with the big hips.
Kim Kardashian.
That's right. And now he's got a new wife who doesn't wear any clothes hardly at all.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's always in the paper.
She's a Melbourne girl.
Yeah, she's an architect apparently. Not sure what she's built. But
So because he started going after the Jews, I just thought it just seemed really up my alley.
it was your cup of tea.
Yeah, it was like really.
Because you said it was anti-Semitism, it was hip hop, it was something else. Snooping. And you're a great snooper. You're a great snooper. Can I just say though that your sidekick Antoinette seemed to be a lot more on top of Kanye West. I mean, she seemed to be a real fan. Like she knew a lot about him.
Yeah.
So she was really useful to have her along.
Totally. And she had before I met her, she'd like been a fan of Kanye, so much so she bought like quite a lot of his like merch. Well, not his merch, his fashion, but he also does a fashion label, and she had like Yeezy sneakers and Yeezy tops and stuff. And she said to me when Kanye came out as a Hitler enthusiast, what should I do with all this stuff? I don't feel like comfortable wearing it, and I don't even know about owning it or whatever. So we kind of back and forth, and then came up with this idea to upcycle it as yarmulkes. It wasn't yarmulkes, you know. And we knew this costume designer, and so it's one of those things that sounds like it's going to be easy to make. Like, you just print off something from the internet and cut around it. But like, if you actually want to do it well, I should have brought it along, but damn. Yeah, anyway, so
Well, because you wanted to stay on people's heads, is that what you're doing it well?
Yeah, so it was the hero.
Designed.
Yeah, there were like 3 yarmulkes, and they took the woman about 2 weeks. And the hero one was this Yeezy sneaker. It's like yellow lime sneaker, and it's like. And when I showed the yarmulke that Kanye fans had just seen as a sneaker before, but now it's in the shape of a Jewish skull cap, I swear they'd faint almost. They could not believe it, and weirdly, people kind of got it. Like even these Kanye fans, like I didn't have to over-explain it to them in America. Like they kind of connected the dots. Oh, that's a Yeezy sneaker. You configured it into a Jewish skull cap because
It's an anti-Semite.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a creative pushback, if you know what I mean.
So, okay, can I take you back to this moment and you decide? See, I mean, your kind of writing is kind of interesting because you went, I understand you went to LA, you went to America, you didn't really know what you were going to find because you're snooping, but you're also kind of just, you know, opening up to whatever happens, and you find the story, you follow a story.
Yeah,
Because story is important. It's not just like getting. I mean, all of your books that I've read here, which are fantastic, but they also, you know, your research goes along with the story. They're not sort of diatribes about a particular angle you're trying to get.
Yeah.
But there's all of that too. You're a great researcher, actually.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much.
No, but you are. I mean, I know how hard it is to do.
like big research book, like where I was going into original, like, you know, the
you did all the
scientific,
papers,
the
scientific
research.
papers.
So there was
Yeah.
like nothing. I was like finding out the definition of smoke. I was looking at and it's not like there was this article in the New York Times that set me off to do that investigation into Philip Morris, and it was just.
But it was also you as a Scrabble guy, a Scrabble major, and interested in words, and you got kind of completely annoyed by the idea that Philip Morris would redefine a word like what was smoking and what was a cigarette.
Oh yeah, and it was like super high stakes. Like, usually my stuff is like, there's a bit of, someone could, if they didn't like me, they could go, oh, yeah, good one, John. Like, for instance, like when I do my research into the far right in Australia for that other book, and then I find out that the white nationalist leader, they knock on his door and find out he had an Asian wife and a half Asian. And like, people go, like, John, you just think of a bit of a troll and whatnot. Like, but I feel like this puff piece, like,
Saving lives is what
yeah,
it's
it was
about.
like, well, some of the states, no one was covering it. It was, so in the European Union, they decided they're going to ban menthol cigarettes on this certain date because they wanted to ban all cigarettes, but they had to start somewhere. So Philip Morris went along with it and said, okay, yeah, fine, we won't produce menthol cigarettes across Europe or whatever. And then they introduced this new thing. They said, God knows this isn't a cigarette. And it was tobacco rolled in paper with a filter at one end that you like put into this device and inhale the tobacco and then breathed out this thing that kind of looked kind of like smoke, but they insisted wasn't. And it worked. It was like the European Union had spent years trying to ban menthol cigarettes.
Oh yeah, that makes
and then they
sense.
just changed the word cigarette to heat stick. And they just did not plan on what to do. What happens if Philip Morris just puts out tobacco wrapped in paper with a filter at one end and says it's a heat stick? And I just learned through that like the power of words and dragging it into Jewish stuff. At the start of that book, I talk about how, you know, at Yeshiva and stuff, we all learn about the power of words, and, you know, God breathed the world into existence through a word. And obviously, even though it wasn't so much of the mind, it's like Jews are just obsessed with scripture and words and what's the gematria, and you know, all the stuff like that. And so, you know, is anyone here Jewish? Well, one thing I've learned, because I'm like interested in religion, is other religions aren't as scripture and book and obsessed as Jews are. Like you might be thinking like, oh well, I mean, in ways they are, and obviously it's like there's so many variables and stuff, but yeah, this whole kind of obsession over scripture and that whole woody thing of pulling apart things like you don't have to assume that's in all faiths. We're the lunatics, and don't feel good by thinking there's other faiths that are lunatics. I feel like we're all lunatic when it comes to words.
All right, so let's go back to this book, because you go there and you're not quite sure what you're going to do, but eventually you hit upon this idea of breaking into. I mean, Kanye West won't give you an interview, which is kind of awkward, because if you want to do a book about someone like that and they don't give you an interview, but you do a really brilliant thing, which is go, okay, I don't really need an interview, but you're going to actually stay in one of these abandoned houses because he's very rich. And it's a good idea because you go in and you go, you know, what is it to be like in his house? And the Goldilocks part is because he sleeps in his bed and he eats his food. But it's a great way of getting inside the idea of a person. And what is it like how does he paint his house and what kind of bed he sleeps in? But I want you to maybe do a reading from the book now because you know, Kanye West wasn't the first time you were disappointed by a big figure in your life. Oh, and I've got the book, haven't I? That's it. With that, yeah.
Ramona, can you make us the microphone to John?
Oh, doesn't he have one? Oh, no, of course, it's not a big one. Oh, you should have given it to me.
From the beginning.
Oh, from the beginning of the chapter?
No, from where
Oh, okay, sure. So I'm the way to get into Kanye's mansion was, it was in a part of Los Angeles. When you think of Los Angeles, you think of like highways and smog and buildings, but there's actually the rural parts of Los Angeles, and this huge mansion of Kanye's was in one of those places, and there's like a forest behind it, and because there's like obviously a gate and a big fence in front of the mansion, the way to get into it was to kind of go through the forest out the back. And so this is me kind of going through the forest and kind of what I see. I see Lord Baden-Powell. Well, I don't see him. Okay, I'll go back a paragraph earlier. I'm trying to think how this is going to make sense to you, and without having to go back to page 1. So I'm trekking through the forest out the back, and it's like daylight is going away and evening's coming over. A branch finds my face, sending my glasses askew. They're an expensive pair, and I consider folding them into my pocket. But I worry that without them, a twig will take out my eye. I push on. I see Lord Robert Baden-Powell. Well, I don't see him, but he has crawled into my mind. The founder of the Scout movement. There he is, a broom brush moustache, crow's feet etched into his face, and a khaki brown scout hat. Does this make me an artist? I should be focused on where my next step lands, darting my eyes around for danger, worldly concerns. But instead, my imagination has gone on its own hike. As a little Boy Scout, I trekked through endless miles of forest. So at first blush, that would seem to explain why this distinguished English gentleman has made his appearance. But my mind hikes further afield. Was Lord Baden-Powell my first Kanye? Stick with me here. During one of these scout outings, hiking through the woods, a fellow cub leant in and said, "My dad told me Lord Baden-Powell didn't like Jews." It turns out he praised Adolf Hitler's book Mein Kampf and dined with the heads of the Hitler Youth. Was this the first time that I was minding my own business and somebody said something to me about Jews that I found jarring and curious? Something that didn't just poof into thin air once spoken, but flitted about in my mind, surviving as a wisp. And do you want to go or stop or what?
No, keep going.
I don't keep going, I'm happy to stop and keep going.
We actually discussed this before.
Back here in Calabasas, are my feet wet or just cold? I hike on, but other wisps are coming to mind. Whoa, check this out, said a classmate in high school, pointing to the upcoming page in Shakespeare. Macbeth is trekking through mud, as I'm trekking through mud, and comes across 3 witches who have stirred the liver of a blaspheming Jew into a bubbling cauldron. Along with hemlock and yew, poisonous plants, the Jew's organ is needed to conjure the soul of the dead. A blasphemer, the Jew, is worthy of being part of that noxious stew because he has not accepted Christ. In fact, Shakespeare, I'm realising now, another of my Kanyes, twisted his knife deeper into the Jews in The Merchant of Venice. There a Jewish money lender, Shylock, demands a pound of flesh from a Christian merchant who can't pay back a loan. Go on. Okay, I'll go on. In Calabasas, dusk has well and truly made way for night. The giant oaks are cutting off any light that the stars and moon might provide. My eyes are straining to find the outline of anything. What was I thinking? I've brought a handheld lantern, a dolphin torch, and a light to strap on my head. But they're all deep in my duffel bag I'm heaving on my back. I'll need a torch to find a torch. I dig my phone out of my pocket and fumble with my thumbs, activating this flashlight. I hold the light ahead and catch the gloss of a pair of eyes. My chest tightens. I stand as still as a statue. My mind tries to deal with the shock, spreading a message through my brain and body. Accept the things you cannot change. But before I can complete a breath, the eyes are nowhere to be seen. Were they even there? If they were indeed my eyes, I'm hoping they belong to an opossum or an owl, something like that, not a witch.
Okay, all right.
Do you want me to the Disney or Disney?
Yeah, I
Okay.
just wanted
spews venom towards my people, a boy at a party offered, "You know Walt Disney hated Jews." Disney! First the most revered figure in English literature, now the most beloved children's filmmaker. He welcomed Nazi filmmaker Leni Riefenstahl to Hollywood. All these wisps intertwining, floating inside my head since childhood, right through to the man of the hour. Kanye isn't a fan, a friend told me a few months ago, offering a clip where Kanye muses over the Jew. "They'll take us and milk us until we die." The Jew extracting a pound of flesh. It doesn't end there. This goes deeper and deeper, reaching towards the centre of the earth of me. As a kid, when these wisps were first being whispered into my ear, I was living with my grandparents. They fled Poland for the Soviet Union in 1939, where they were imprisoned in a work camp, a forest in northern Russia, where trees were chopped down and milled. They were the only ones left standing in their families. Parents, siblings, cousins, uncles and aunts, all having been extinguished back in Poland. If you reckon Jews go on about the Holocaust too much, you should have been in my grandparents' lounge room. They never spoke about it, and you knew not to bring it up. These wisps swirling around my head are a strange beast, ethereal, esoteric, aesthetically seductive, irresistible juxtapositions of good and evil. Cubs, cherub-faced and innocent, contrasting with Lord Baden-Powell dining with Nazis. In my mind, right now, as I pull myself over another log, their little pink faces press against the window, watching Lord Baden-Powell and Hitler's men devouring their meal, teeth tearing through meat. And now a translucent image of Walt Disney, his arm around Leni Riefenstahl. Overlaps another image, this one of Disney with his arm around Snow White. These woods feel like an enchanted forest. I half expect Bambi to poke his nose out from behind a shrub. Taking all this in, I realise I'd be shortchanging myself if I justified this trespassing as nihilistic thrill-seeking. If I wanted that, I'd train surf. No, Kanye is playing with my family story for his art. He started it. I realise Antoinette was right after all. This adventure is art. The enchanted forest opens, and there stands Kanye's mansion.
That's what I want you to do. Can you describe the compound and what it was like inside it? Because it wasn't exactly, he wasn't good at upkeep.
Yeah, so...
He was a wealthy person, but
he's super wealthy, so... you know how you might have an idea, like you're going to put up a little, a shelf or something, and then you start it, and 45 minutes later you just get kind of sick and you just leave it, or whatever. Like, Kanye's like that. He has all these thoughts, but he has like hundreds of millions of dollars and all this power, so he can kind of follow through on these brain thoughts and then just kind of bugger off after, and just lose interest pretty quickly. So one of those things was this mansion. He used it more for the outside of the mansion, where there is this wooden amphitheatre that's like a church, and he used that on Sunday mornings until he got bored to like bring in a choir, and they sang and it was beautiful and all that jazz. So that's what. But why just buy an amphitheatre when you can have a huge mansion attached to it and then a huge house next to it as well? And so he used the mansion nominally for like after the church service, maybe there's dressing tables in there and people can come in and have a kiddish. So there was that, but he also, later when he broke up with Kim Kardashian, and so he started going out with this Russian model, and then he started using the place as a bachelor pad as well. So it had two purposes. And it was quite confusing to be in because, like, for instance, in the mansion, everything's painted blue. Roof, walls, floor, everything is blue, and you kind of I'm trying to put it together, like what's going on here. But it seemed, and then you find out, this was like he got an artist in, and so you know how like contemporary art's ambiguous or whatever, so, this was art.
Well, like a blue Rothko.
Yeah, like the whole thing. So it wasn't just blue because, I don't know why he liked blue, it was like art. And by the time I got there, what I'm about to describe, it kind of collapsed due to the wind and the weather, but he had this scaffolding and this taut white plastic kind of surrounding the whole mansion. And then I was trying to figure out why and give it like a rational, like, are they trying to block out the paparazzi and taking drone shots or whatever? But then you do a little bigger, digging a little bit, and it's art again. And so, yeah, the whole place, when there was something odd, often it could be explained that, you know, it was art.
So there was stuff on the walls that he was doing.
Oh yes, both that, because before going to his mansion, I made my way into a different property which he was using as a schoolhouse briefly for a Christian military academy until he got bored. And then I noticed on the walls of that there were like Bible quotes, and by Bible quotes I mean Torah quotes, and then it was Old Testament, not New. And then also at this house he had, you know, like in chalk he'd written like some of the quotes from the story of Ezekiel and stuff, and the Valley of the Bones. So yeah, so he was really, I really felt I was meant to be there. Like, because all this stuff was like so up my alley, and it was like, yeah.
But you were really trying to analyse him from the inside.
I mean,
Why do you need to know what he's thinking when he's so clearly a really disturbed person?
Yeah, but I think he's like, it's a whole wreckage of different things going on in his head. So, yeah, part of it you could just go, he's disturbed. Part of it, he's an artist trying to do transgressive things. But part of it, he did really have this itch to scratch about Jews and Jewish scripture. Because I find out in the book that he'd been going to a Torah class once a week. And, I mean, as far as you can kind of pull these simple... As far as... Is that better? No. What? Is that better? Oh, okay, sure.
I don't know if that's so comfortable though.
No, that's okay, whatever. And you don't like this one? What do you prefer? Put it further away.
No, this is a very big audience.
the other one made a lot of noise, and so
Nice.
Too much noise.
It's a somewhat, that other microphone is for them.
That's right. Rabbi Ezekiel says.
So I think and all this stuff, I'm not trying to tie it up in a neat bow, like it's all floating
No,
about,
it's not
whatever. But I think Kanye, like one thing, just say you're not a Christian or you haven't really explored it, and then suddenly you decide to jump all in and go, I'm going to become a Christian, right? And you're reading the scripture and you learn, you have these things. First of all, you're hearing about the Jews, you know, the Israelites, the Hebrews or whatever, and that they're the chosen people, and that's such a provocative concept, and you're being told as a Christian that these other people who aren't you are the chosen people, and that's
Annoying.
Yeah, that's kind of annoying and kind of alive with electricity. But then you go to the New Testament and you find out that Jews killed Jesus and the blood of his death is on, you know, all the future generations. So that's a lot to take in, and it obviously could easily go haywire. And, you know, to be fair, I'm not pretending like not all scripture, but at least what I've like looked into, like Jewish scripture and Muslim scripture, is like, it's pretty spicy too. So I'm not like trying to pretend, oh my God, there's something like, you know, particular about Christians and their scripture is bad compared to the Torah or anything like that. But yeah, it is. It's like we are the main character in their scripture, and so you can obviously with these chosen few kill Christ. If you just jump all on in like Kanye did, perhaps that kind of, you know, that can set your head off in a bad direction.
But also, it does go back to, you know, maybe 60, 70 years of kind of relationship, or 80 or 90, of black Americans and Jews, and the relationship between American Jews and black American Jews, which started off very differently than where it's ended up. So, I mean, which you analyse. Which is interesting for you, because there were a lot of American Jews who marched in rallies against racism, liberating black Americans from all of the stuff that they suffered. Tell us about it.
Oh yeah, but I would say when you get to this esoteric stuff, like that's not, most black Americans, if you know what I mean. So I don't think it's like, oh, most black Americans thought this about the Jews back in the 60s and now. Because people like Kanye, most black Americans think that, especially
No, I didn't say
this, but especially like in the kind of esoteric, what's the word I'm looking for, like spiritual, mystical sense, like I don't think, but yeah,
it's true that politics, daily politics.
No, it is true that like there's been a journey where both Jewish Americans and black Americans were seen as minorities on the outside, suffering bigotry, so there was like a joining together of things, and there's still that. But then, yeah, there's all these other little frictions from both sides, but nothing ever fits neatly, and both sides feel ripped off. Some people, not all, both sides, people can feel ripped off from the other side, and so things can go haywire, and again, like bad for the world, but good for me writing a book about these things. Like the main, one of the black American groups I looked into was the Black Hebrew Israelites, and I kind of use them as the representative story of like me being told my identity's a problem. But it's like, it's so extreme what they say. Like, they don't just say you're a problem because you're a Jew. They say you're a problem because you're a fake Jew.
Yeah, because they're the real Jews.
Because they're the real Jews, and that was really confronting. And again, all this stuff can just sound like it's basically all fun and games until it's not. And so telling Jews that they're not the real Jews and that they've stolen your identity, like, oh, why not? Like, people believe in UFOs, they believe the earth is flat, it's all and Bigfoot, and why not this or whatever. But I visited a synagogue in Muncie, in New York State, where someone who the FBI says was partially under the influence of this sort of Black Hebrew Israelite stuff had gone into on Hanukkah, and this is only about, 4 years ago or whatever, and with a machete and started flashing around at the Hanukkah ceremony, and then, one person ended up dying or whatever, and so, it's all fun and games until it's not.
So this is you approach these matters, which are serious matters, and they do trouble you. So how do you think about injecting humour into it?
It just seems, I usually just kind of just feel drawn towards things that are, where there's like cultural fault lines that don't quite make sense. And then like organically that ends up either being like dangerously interesting or hopefully more often like ironic and funny and interesting. So yeah, it just kind of happens.
You call it bumbling.
Yeah, bumbling, yeah.
It's sort of a gonzo journalism that bumbles along.
Yeah, because I just, and also, the other thing is, I really have to bumble because it's my job. I don't have this backup plan. It's not like, it's my hobby and like during the week, I'm a Jewish lawyer or something. So I've really done this, like gone down this path and chosen this path where it's like the stakes are even higher on that level. But it's kind of cool, but it kind of like forces me to, I don't get to keep a screenplay in my drawer for 12 years and not complete it or whatever. It's like, it's my job.
But it is very anxious. Maybe I'm just too anxious, but when I'm reading it and I'm thinking, how's he going to, he's gone to the US, he doesn't really know what the story is, and how are you going to fund this? How long is it going to take before you can bumble into having a good idea and to end up with a story? And does that bother you? Does that drive you?
A little bit. No, but I wouldn't. I thought it was enough that this mainstream celebrity was talking about these strange things. So he wasn't just regular anti-Semitism where it was like, oh, you could just take out Jews and put in Vietnamese people or whatever. He was
specific.
Yeah, he was like Protocols of the Elders of Zion kind of stuff. And so I
Which is unfortunate for someone who has such a wide influence to sort of drag up the Protocols of the Elders of Zion and give it a real breath of fresh air.
Oh yeah, totally. And it's like, it's all just, it's so hectic and so dangerous. And so basically I'm saying, I didn't just get on a plane and like bumble, you know what I mean? Like, I thought there was something there. And then when I was finding it hard to track down Kanye, obviously, in this sort of creative sense, when I kind of was thinking about going into the house, that seemed to kind of, even though I didn't know exactly what it all meant, like, so no, I don't bumble forever.
Well, and you know, when they say when you dream about houses, that's about the self.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's also where it gets difficult because my first drafts of my book, like first, I'm always under-explaining things, and like my editor can't really make head or tails of the tornado type on paper that I've done. And he kind of can just sense it or whatever. And then he goes, no, you have to explain this more, you've got to explain this more. And then the second draft, I always over-explain everything. And people don't like that from me. They think it's a bit, they think it's a bit pretentious or moral. I'm in this like painted in a corner trap with my work, where people want me to make a moral point, but without moralising. Like, I have to sort of like somehow kind of skirt around it and leave things unspoken, but the reader can interpret those unspoken things, and that's where the point is. But as soon as there's even a hint, unless it's like self-aware as a writer, making fun of myself, then I'm whining. I can do that, but just whining is just I just no permission. And this is people who like me. I'm not talking about people who don't like my book, but people who like me just like for instance, is it this book on Kanye? There's not really finger wagging at Kanye, that much or whatever. Like it's all kind of unspoken but yeah, that's what the PowerPoint is.
But it's also a reflection of what kind of book this is. I mean, you're writing a book about writing a book.
Oh yeah.
And you've got journalistic models. I mean, you mentioned Janet Malcolm about her idea when she was doing a review of another book.
Yeah.
What did she say? That every journalist who's not is being honest with themselves think that shouldn't realise that what they're doing is unforgivable or has no. But that's not really.
Yeah,
I don't believe that.
Yeah, I don't think that anymore. Like I wrote that in my first book when I was really confused about things. That was Murder in Mississippi, and
Which is this one.
yes, that was about this young black guy who was caught killing this like 60-something white nationalist, and then he said the white nationalists made sexual advances on him and stuff, and to make the matter more confusing was 11 months before this dude was murdered, or killed at least, this white nationalist, I was in Mississippi, and I was hanging out with him shooting a doco, so I spent 2 days with this guy who ends up getting killed 11 months later.
And you had unaired footage of this?
I had unaired footage because he was a lawyer as well, and he started legal action against the ABC, and we could never show it, or whatever.
But then when he was dead...
Yeah, that's my first thing. Good news! And that was when, that's one of the big reasons I got into book writing, and like my last 4 big projects have been books, is just, I just felt like, how can this be that I know this guy? He's been killed, and he's a white man.
So it's shared, in fact.
Yeah, and he is. And then, and I knew, the court case wasn't going to wait for me to go through the 7 rounds of Screen Australia funding. and I really don't like filming. It's just not for me. So I was just like,
a book.
A book, I'll do that. And Yeah, there's these things called true crime books. I'd never read a true crime. I just knew of the genre.
Did you read them before you wrote it?
Yeah, totally. I read them before. I was madly reading them, trying to figure out how to write a true crime book.
And look, and you won this best true crime book ever of the year award.
Of the year.
That's pretty good.
Yes, thank you. The best book ever of the year.
Of that year.
Australia.
Can I just introduce the fact that at the beginning of this book,
Yes.
you set it in Sydney
Yes.
at the Opera House.
Yeah, that's it.
Tell us about that.
Because all this, my time in Kanye's mansion, that all took place.
What's going on with these microphones? This is like, what is happening here? Forget it, just keep answering the question.
Yeah. So, did you hear that last bit or not? Okay, sure. Do you want me to go back half an hour? Yeah, so this all took place. I went to LA and spent that week in Kanye's mansion. It was like, that was 7 months before October 7. So, yeah, so when I'm going through this book and I'm going on this kind of odyssey where I'm talking to people about Jewish identity and anti-Semitism or whatever, like, it's through the framework of the Black Americans and Jewish Americans, and, like, for instance, I just didn't bring up, I think I did bring it up, like, a couple of times or whatever, like, Israel, Palestine, but didn't, like, it wasn't what the book was about or whatever. So then, I come back to Australia and I've got this whole adventure, and then October 7 happens, and then suddenly Jewish identity and anti-Semitism and all that is like front and centre a bit, but my book happened 7 months earlier, and it's not like I could crunch the timeline and pretend it was happening now, but I just didn't ask anyone. It just wasn't like, I just didn't have the material to write about it like that. And I did go out on, if people are familiar with my work, like I did this book, Depends What You Mean by Extremists, which is mainly, I'm out on the streets of different rallies around 2015 and 16 when the alt-right's growing, and also I've written probably about half a dozen feature articles it's like me on the streets at various things, like at an anti-vax rally and like just bumbling and finding little things that don't quite fit. And so it seemed kind of obvious on one level. It's like, oh, maybe I'd come back after the Kanye's mansion and like, oh, all this stuff's exploded on the streets. And I did go, like I was following my impulses, and I was there on the first day where the Israeli Australians had heard that anti-Israel people were going to come outside to burn down Purgatory, and there was going to be, so I was like, man, that's like I'll go there and I'll John Safran it, and then I was following all these things, and in the first draft of the book, there is this, but it just all seemed, no matter how I did it, it seemed, first of all, it wasn't going to make anyone happy. So if it was like going to be like, oh, hang on, we don't want to get in trouble with people who are either pro-Israel or anti-Israel, it was not going to solve that problem at all. And it just seemed, and this is, it's more like creatively, I guess, where does creative decisions and moral decisions overlap or whatever, but it just, I reckon people were just, I'm sure, people were just going, oh, this is like, you've tacked this on at the end, and it's just a bit boxed. Like, you're trying to get off the hook, John, somehow, you know what I mean? And it just, like, it didn't, even beyond being whether it was good or bad, like, it just didn't land. To dig into the whole thing of, like, Black Americans and Jewish Americans, like, it's 70,000 words to go through all the subtleties of things and express it. Whilst this was more jagged, because it was like the book needs to be, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go to this falafel shop that was vandalised. Okay, I've got that. But also now I'm going to go to this, this Palestinian shop that was vandalised. Okay, I've got that, and it just absolutely didn't land. And I'm so glad, because I feel like just how the book's come out, I just think people get it. And I actually think it's more creatively interesting that just on the cusp of this stuff exploding, I went on this odyssey that was looking at Jewish identity, but, you know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like coming at it sideways. Yeah, they're coming at it sideways, and I haven't really got too much. I mean, I don't know, maybe people just don't read books anymore. But
but you're actually there at
sorry.
the beginning of the book.
No.
At the opera.
Yes. So, but having said all that, I just thought a reader's not going to be able to read this book. And it was coming out. It was actually going to come out, I think, just incidentally on the anniversary of either, I think, like October 9th at the Sydney, like just totally incidentally. And this book was incidentally, and so it was pushed a bit forward. Forward or backwards? It was pushed like October 20th, so whatever. But anyway, well, basically, I just didn't think anyone could read this book about Jewish identity and anti-Semitism and not be thinking about what was going on. So, yeah, the preface of the book is me at the Sydney Opera House on October 9th or whatever, where it got spicy and there were accusations that F the Jews was chanted and gas the Jews and everything.
Where's the Jews?
And where's the Jews? And I was down there. that like just because I'm a bumbler. And so I thought, even though that happened 7 months after, it kind of, I put it at the very start, and it's just meant to be a nod to the reader of like, you know, I know the context in which this book is being put out. And yeah.
And it is, I mean, it is about your experience as a Jewish writer, from when you were a hip hop yeshiva brother, to now.
Yes.
So it's all perfectly legit.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think, I just think, I think it's like a different book to do if I was to do a book on everything that's happened since, and I've been, you know, some of you might have spotted me at this rally or that rally or whatever. And
I think I saw you on the news actually just after the Das Israel.
Are
you on the news? Did you go down there?
It wasn't me,
I
but
think it was
like,
you. I recognise.
But it is like I remember one week the Australian Jewish News came out, and there was like, it said dangerous people, blah blah blah, and it was like it was a shot outside Purgatory or whatever, and these people who'd come there munching, and then like just in the background is my little head. And I was like,
and one of the most
I'm a bit, I seem to, but it's like it got down to it, and it was like either I just throw out this book and start writing about going down to the rallies, or I push that into another project. And I've been like going down to Adus, that's around the corner for me,
It's local.
Yeah, and I've been kind of gathering stuff and interviewing people, and you know, there's more stuff bubbling around.
Bubbling going on.
Yes.
I'm going to ask people if you want to ask John a question yourself in a sec. But can I just ask one question? Because I have seen video of you when you like doing hip hop dancing at yeshiva.
Oh yeah.
And that was hysterical. But I just wonder but also when you were a kid.
Yes.
I think there is some footage of you doing a bit of hip hop when you were actually at high school.
Oh yeah.
How did they manage you there?
No.
How did the rabbi?
So when I went to yeshiva, I went to a normal state primary school, Northbourne Primary School.
I went to Northbourne.
Yeah, it's a really.
But 20 years before you.
And it's a really, that's a really good school. And then I went to Baldwin High.
I went to Baldwin High.
Yeah, but you were more efficient. So first year at Baldwin High, I was so, I just didn't do the work, and I got really bad marks, really bad marks.
Really?
So my parents
Because you're smart. Why did you get bad marks?
Well, I feel like it would just be indulgently going into my problems, you know. But what I said, my parents said, even though like my mother was, and her family, they were like real big kind of cultural Jews, like they were from the Bund, and my grandparents on her side, they were from the Bund in over in Poland, and then after the war, they came here and helped set up the Bund here. So they were like real big kind of thing, but they were, especially my grandmother, like big anti-God kind of thing. That whole thing that went down and where was God. Then on my dad's side, so basically I'm saying they weren't yeshiva buchers.
Yeah.
And same with on my dad's side, like he wasn't a yeshiva bucher either. But they sent me to yeshiva.
Why?
Yeah, exactly, because it was the equivalent. I don't know whether subconsciously my dad was trying to troll my grandmother. Because she was like so anti all that. Like she was always like really cynical about like the kosher scams and they just pay the rep. And then my dad sends me to yeshiva. But I think it was more they thought I needed a small, strict school. So it was a bit like to say you were from a Catholic family but not that religious, and I'm going to send him to get hit on the knuckles by the nuns. I'll keep him in line. But then, my yeshiva was a circus. But anyway, I ended up. What was the question at the start?
What did they think about your hip hop here?
Yeshiva. So when I went to yeshiva, I was like their dream kind of student because the Lubavitch. No, I'll tell you how. The Lubavitches, they're in 770 Crown Heights, New York, and they send missionaries around the world.
Yeah.
To like set up
you're
schools.
a lost soul.
And their whole thing is to try to get less religious Jews to become more religious. And already, when I went there, all the Jews were already religious. And then I rock up, and it's like what they've been waiting for. They set up a shed. So it was like a really warm place, and we just did. And also there were lots of the missionaries, because they're from New York, and there was this whole like squawky New York kind of vibe to the place, and like you didn't get in trouble at school for being a loudmouth as long as your joke was funny and all that stuff like that. So yes, and the whole thing of like rapping at a school concert, like
that was okay.
Oh yeah, totally. Like it would have been, because it was okay. Cause I don't think it like there were any kind of things in the Talmud about how you're not allowed to break dance.
although I saw their faces when you came back.
Oh, yeah,
you were making that documentary, and you were.
I really have quite the rap sheet, don't I?
They really look happy, and they looked like they were getting all the little kids to go. Come on, stand in line, and let's go back to the class.
You
didn't see anything here.
This is for one of my comedy documentary shows, where I talk about how in that 80s movie Footloose, it was about a little Christian community in rural America, and the school dance was banned, because there can't be dance between boys and girls. And then Kevin Bacon's character comes and makes this impassioned plea to the kid's minister, going, does it not say in the book of Joseph or the book of David, I will dance, I will dance. So anyway, so when I was thinking, I thought I'd kind of do that and recreate the scene. Yeah. But in real life, so I went back to yeshiva.
But you had girls too.
But I spoke to Rabbi Grona, and I was doing the Kevin Bacon thing. I was going, look, it says in the Torah, in the book of
And he said, yes, you're correct.
Yeah, and so then we did the dancing. Like, I also brought along a van of dancers, and then we ran onto the yeshiva school grounds and dancing Footloose, girls and boys and stuff like that. And I have had on several occasions a grown man come up to me and say, listen, when you did that, I was in year 7 at the time, I was in grade 6 at the time, that was the best day of school. So I stand by cutting Footloose on the yeshiva grounds.
It was hysterical. Is there anyone who wants... Oh, there's a question here. I think you might have to stand up and get one of these hundreds of microphones that apparently appear from nowhere.
I don't know if they're working.
Well, try it.
I can try yelling.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. So we're going to bring it. Okay.
I have a question. I've been wondering for a while, the impression that I got from, by the way, I'm Hannah, and I went to Beth Rivka.
It's like an angry to you.
I always saw how, I was brainwashed at Beth Rivka, and then I was managed to become atheist when I was about 25. And, but I was watching your stuff when I was younger, and watched Versus God, and saw all the religion stuff, and saw that you were quite atheist, and at the time I still believed in Hashem, and that was really difficult for me to deal with. And then I read, fast forward, depends what you mean by extremist, and after that I noticed that you had your first stage show, which was True Detective. And it was the first time that I was seeing you, like, basically saying, I'm Jewish, I identify as a Jew. So I'm here to ask you if my impression is correct that after you did the research in extremist, whether that made you feel more Jewish, or did I get the wrong end of the stick and you just...
Oh, I think, like, whatever, culturally, and obviously culturally Jewish is so tangled in with religiously Jewish. Like, if I had Shabbos every week, every Friday night, and and my family lit the candles, and I cut the prayers and said the prayers for my entire child, is that like a religious or a cultural thing or whatever? I don't remember ever. I remember just when I was on Race Around the World, which was my absolute first thing I ever did, where 8 young filmmakers went around separately around the globe and had to send in a little 4-minute documentary. I remember at that time I was thinking, I don't want to play up that I'm Jewish, because I'd overthought it, and I was like, I don't want to be one of those corny comedians who's just like leaning on their ethnic heritage or whatever. And then I got baptised in West Africa and went through that whole process, and I just thought, this is so much funnier. If at the start, like the title is Mum, I'm not Jewish anymore. And I said, listen, I'll just do it this once. This once, I'll lean into my Jewish identity because it makes it so much better. And then, like, the next week I'm in Israel, and I'm streaking through Jerusalem, trying to use Jewish prayer to kind of change the outcome of a football match and everything. And then I think I've been Jewish since the start. And also, when we went to John Safran versus God, I definitely had like religious people just interpret the show totally differently. It's like John's exploring all these religions, he's being really open-minded. And I kind of was, like, it's not my fault the world's wacky. So I think I've been definitely like culturally Jewish, and when it comes, and also I had different, when I was at yeshiva, like any issue I had was more just any issue in any high school, and I think just kind of subconsciously, even though I was just absolutely obsessed with hip hop really, I think kind of I was soaking it up that this is kind of pretty interesting that I'm like in this situation, and but I just find all these mystical things like super interesting, and I'm like more likely to try to figure out a way to be brainwashed and drawn into them and failing much more than I've got kind of being my bonnet about religion. I once got in trouble because I was touring with Richard Dawkins around Australia. I was like, interviewing, I was like, you. And sort of one time in the green room, it was pretty early on in the tour, I forget which city it was, and Richard Dawkins is in the green room. He's got his laptop open, and he's watching a video of me being exorcised, exorcised by this Christian minister, kind of hitting me with the Bible, and I'm flapping around, and Richard Dawkins turns to me and goes, what is this? And I've been busted because I've been taken on. They probably thought I was going to be this big kind of thing, and I've been busted taking part in an exorcism. And so I guess I'm complicated.
Yes, at the front.
Hi, I'm Susan.
Is there a microphone? Because Susie, you've got a very bad voice, sorry, the people in the back can't hear.
Okay. What do you think of the insight I've just had while you were talking about, telling us about Kanye West gets bored building shelves? Do you think he'll get bored with being an anti-Semite? The same way
Oh, he'll get bored.
that me?
Oh, yeah, probably.
How long
yeah.
did you get to know him?
How well did I didn't get to know him. Well, I reckon I think there's such a mangle of things going on. It's probably like with all of us, like, to try to what it could get really reductive and kind of really plot out exactly why everything's happening is pretty hard, because that's not how the human mind works. But I did notice one thing with Kanye, amongst the many things, was he kind of played with fire around transgression, like I do. And like, for instance, him dabbling in fascist iconography, like that's pretty stock standard. You know, David Bowie did it in the 1970s, as did the Sex Pistols. But I think where Kanye definitely kind of messes up in a way that someone as generous as me can kind of be open-minded to David Bowie or the Sex Pistols is, unlike them, and I'd say unlike me when I dabble in transgression, Kanye starts hanging out with the actual fascists. So if Kanye was sort of like just Naziing it up a bit in his, whatever you could go, he's being maybe a lame-ass transgressor, but he's just being kind of artistically transgressive, dabbling with dark things. But then he hangs out with the actual fascists like Nick Fuentes, who's this young white nationalist, with Candace Owen, who's another kind of spicy character. So it stops being, it stops, and I think it's less creatively interesting. On top of everything else, I think if you're going to like dabble in the transgression is all about ambiguity, I reckon. That's where it's kind of, and as soon as you're like, hey, I'm dressing like a fascist, oh, and I'm hanging out with fascists, suddenly it's like, it's not ambiguous anymore.
Yeah, this side. Yeah, that lady with her hand up.
Me?
That's you.
Oh.
And this is your microphone.
Hi, I'm Josie, and I'm an introvert, and this is scary.
Welcome, Josie.
I don't know if I got caught up in the storytelling of Squat, but there were some genuine times in there when I was really creeped out and concerned. And you've done a lot of insane things over the course of 20 years. I just wonder if you have a sense of self-preservation and does that ever kick in and think maybe this particular thing isn't a great plan?
Yeah, it's true. Usually it's after the fact that I kind of really reflect on things. So usually, like the way I can explain it is, you know, if you're like speeding a little in your car, you're not thinking to yourself, oh, I'm going to be a quadriplegic for the rest of my life. You just think this is the time where speeding a little bit's not going to result in that. So, yeah, usually when I'm doing something, I just lull myself into, like, this isn't going to be the time, like, someone's going to be on the property and have a gun. Even though it's America. And also, yeah, it's such a balancing act. It's you know, like you want to have fun and an adventure, and I guess it's sort of like some of my stuff is like extreme sport with subtext, and I really enjoy it. So like, well, I don't know, why do people do extreme sport? But I wouldn't want to do extreme sport unless there was some, you know, subtext to it. So it's, yeah, I kind of have to roll the dice and hope it all works out okay. And yeah.
Now, we're going to have one more question, but I'm just going to tell you, and that can be you, there are all these books over here, and John's going to sign them for you. So remember, don't go out before you go and buy a book and get him to sign it for you. And that, you're happy to do, aren't you?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Of course. Yes, that man.
Willie, just
Willie.
yeah.
Willie.
Don't put me on the spot about anything.
I won't, John.
Don't ask me anything that's going to get me in trouble.
It won't, definitely won't get you into trouble. So your work is a response to the anti-Semite. I was wondering, do you ever think or hope or want the anti-Semite's response to your work?
I get responses.
What are you hoping to get out of the anti-Semite as a response to your work?
Well, I think, particularly in the context of Australia, and not that I think this hard about it, like especially early on in my career, you're just kind of going along on your vibes and instincts and what you think is funny or dangerous or interesting or whatever. But I think just in a very kind of subtle, like minor way, I think, big way. Like my work, it's not for the anti-Semites, but it's like other people who are not anti-Semites or not Jewish. I think my work does put a bit of a stone in the shoe if they're kind of thinking of going too deep down. Like to give you an example, when I was writing Depends What You Mean by Extremist, that book about it, like, you know, I'd go on those white nationalist forums, and, you know, I thought, oh, why not type in my name, let someone talk about me. And there was this one guy, and he said, and it was on the message, goes, listen, I understand what you're saying about the banks and the Jews, but I really like John Safran. And I thought, like on the thin line. That's stopping that. So I think I was talking to a Jewish artist, and we were just saying that, like, you just put out good work, or it's not a good work, but you try to like put out as a Jewish artist in Australia, just try to put out good stuff, and maybe it's about Jewish stuff, maybe it's not, and but either way, it's just sort of like just helps a general thing of, you know, keeping things a bit calm. It's a bit like Black Americans and hip hop, and also Black American comedy, like Jewish American comedy, is like, it's really hard to be anti-black when you're, or at least anti-Black American, when like so much of the art, or enough of the art, is pretty awesome, if you know what I mean. And so I just think like Jewish artists can learn from that, or we've already learned from that. And it's just, yeah, we don't have to be overly didactic in our art, or overly, you know, we can just go, hey, what's fun, what's nourishing, what's stimulating, and then in a kind of in a way that you can't really micromanage. It's just putting vibes out there that might, in a minor, modest way, help stop anti-Semitism. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, why don't we thank John Safran for his...
Thank you. And thank you. And I borrowed your book, and I was able to borrow your book because I'm paid up and proud member of the library and have been for ages. So thank you, library.